Welcome back to Coin Reveal USA, where we uncover the history, hidden details, and real market value of American coins that could be sitting unnoticed in your collection, old jar, drawer, or even pocket change. Today, we are taking a close look at the 1977 Eisenhower Dollar, a large and iconic American coin that many people overlook. If you have a 1977 Eisenhower Dollar with a small d mint mark and the coin is in good condition, stay with me because we are going to examine what this coin is really worth in today's market, why most examples are not extremely rare, what makes some examples much more valuable, and the important detail that could turn an ordinary 1977 Eisenhower Dollar into a potentially very valuable discovery. The 1977 Eisenhower Dollar was produced at the Denver Mint, and the small d mint mark identifies it as a Denver issue. The Denver Mint produced 32,983,006 examples of the 1977 Eisenhower Dollar, making it a fairly common issue compared with some of the more difficult coins in the Eisenhower Dollar series. This is important because simply finding a 1977 dollar does not automatically mean you have a rare coin. However, condition, striking quality, errors, varieties, and authentication can make a dramatic difference in value. The regular 1977 Eisenhower Dollar is a copper nickel-clad coin, not a regular silver dollar. So collectors should be careful when someone claims that every 1977 Eisenhower Dollar contains silver. The Eisenhower Dollar itself has an important place in American coin history. These large dollar coins were introduced in 1971 to honor President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and their reverse design features an eagle landing on the moon, inspired by the Apollo 11 mission. The coin was designed by Frank Gasparro, and its enormous size made it very different from the smaller dollar coins Americans use today. By 1977, the Eisenhower Dollar was already approaching the end of its regular production period, with 1978 being the final year of the series before the smaller Susan B. Anthony Dollar arrived. Now let's talk about the condition of your 1977 Eisenhower Dollar, because this is where the value story becomes much more interesting. If your coin is in good circulated condition, meaning it has visible wear from being handled and used, it is generally a high dollar rarity. Current price guides place circulated examples around the neighborhood of face value to a small premium, depending on the exact grade and marketplace. For example, NGC's July 2026 guide lists circulated 1977 examples around $1,500 to $1,900. While other market guides show similar high dollar ranges for ordinary circulated pieces. So if your 1977 Eisenhower Dollar is simply worn but complete and problem-free, you should expect hundreds or thousands of dollars from it, but there is an important difference between a circulated coin and a true mint state coin. A mint state coin has not been circulated and retains its original mint luster. As the grade increases, the value can rise quickly because high-grade 1977 Eisenhower Dollars are much harder to find without scratches, bag marks, dents, or other imperfections. Current market information shows that uncirculated examples can bring several dollars, while higher certified grades can reach substantially higher prices. AppMax, for example, lists guide values ranging from about $400 for an uncirculated example to around $20 at Ms. 63. $500 at Ms. 64, $700 at Ms. 65, and around $900 at Ms. 66. These numbers are estimates and actual selling prices can vary depending on certification, appeal, timing, and the marketplace. The really exciting part comes when we reach the very highest grades. PCGS reports that the 1977 Eisenhower Dollar becomes much scarcer in very high mint state grades. Their survival estimates indicate that only a relatively small number survive at Ms. 65 or better compared with the enormous number originally minted. PCGS also records a spectacular auction result of $7,637.5 for a 1977 Eisenhower Dollar graded Ms. 67. Another market reference currently lists a 1977 Ms. 67 example at several $1,000s. But this is where you need to be extremely careful. A normal circulated 1977 dollar is not worth thousands of dollars simply because it is from 1977. Those huge prices apply to exceptional, professionally graded coins, and sometimes to special varieties or errors. Now here is the detail that every collector should know. The 1977D Eisenhower dollar is famous for an extremely rare error involving a 40% silver-clad planchet. According to PCGS, a small number of 1977D Eisenhower dollars were accidentally struck on silver-clad planchets left over from the 1976S bicentennial silver dollar production. PCGS estimates that approximately 10 to 15 of these remarkable errors exist. These are completely different from ordinary 1977D clad dollars, and they can be worth many thousands of dollars. Some examples have reportedly sold in the range of $15,000 to $20,000. This is one of the reasons the 1977D Eisenhower dollar deserves a second look. Even though the regular issue is common, however, please do not assume that a heavy-looking or shiny 1977D coin is automatically silver. The normal 1977D Eisenhower dollar has a copper-nickel outer layer over a copper center. The standard coin weighs about 22.7 grams and measures roughly 38.5 millimeters across. A suspected silver planchet error requires proper testing and professional authentication. Do not clean the coin, scratch it, damage the edge, or use destructive methods to try to prove what it is. If you genuinely suspect an unusual planchet or major mint error, the safest approach is to have the coin examined by a reputable professional grading service or experienced Numismatics. So what should you look for on your own 1977D Eisenhower dollar? Start with the date and mint mark. Confirm that the date reads 1977 and look for the D mint mark below the portrait. Then examine the coin under good lighting. Look closely at Eisenhower's cheek, hair, jawline, and the open fields around the portrait. These areas can reveal scratches, contact marks, or signs of circulation. On the reverse, inspect the eagle, the moon, the lettering, and the surrounding fields. A coin with strong original luster, sharp details, and very few marks has a much better chance of being valuable than a heavily worn example. Another important point is that cleaning can destroy collector value. Many people see an old dollar that looks dark, dull, or dirty and think polishing it will make it more attractive. Unfortunately, cleaning can leave permanent hairline scratches and unnatural surfaces. Collectors and professional graders generally prefer original surfaces. So if you find a 1977D Eisenhower dollar, resist the temptation to polish it. Leaving the coin in its original condition is usually the safer choice. Let's summarize the potential value ranges. If your 1977D Eisenhower dollar is circulated and in ordinary good condition, think roughly around $1 to a few dollars rather than hundreds. If it is uncirculated, the value can move into the several dollar range and higher depending on grade. Around Ms. 63 to Ms. 65, market guides can place examples in the tens of dollars, while exceptionally high-grade Ms. 66 and Ms. 67 coins can become much more valuable. And if your coin turns out to be one of the extremely rare 40% silver planchet errors, the value can jump dramatically into the thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. Remember, these are market estimates and documented examples, not a guarantee that every coin will sell for those amounts. One more thing to remember is that coin values change over time. Dealer prices, auction results, collector demand, certification, grade, eye appeal, and rarity all influence what a coin actually sells for. A price guide can give you a useful starting point, but the actual market value is ultimately determined by what a buyer is willing to pay for that specific coin. That is especially true for high-grade Eisenhower dollars, where a difference of only one grading point can sometimes mean a dramatic difference in price. So, is your 1977D Eisenhower dollar worth keeping? Absolutely. Even if your coin is only worth around face value or a small premium, it is still an important piece of American history. And because the series has famous high-grade examples and extraordinary mint errors, every 1977D deserves a careful inspection before you spend it or sell it. A coin that looks ordinary at first glance could potentially have a much more interesting story hidden in its condition, composition, or minting characteristics. If you have a 1977D Eisenhower dollar in good condition, the most realistic expectation is that it is probably worth only a small amount above its $1 face value unless it has exceptional preservation, a major error, or another significant collectible feature. But if your coin is unusually sharp, has brilliant original luster, has very few marks, or appears different from a normal-clad Eisenhower dollar, that is when you should take a closer look and consider professional authentication. Next up, the 1776 to 1976 bicentennial Eisenhower dollar with the D mint mark. If you have one of these large dollar coins in good condition, do not spend it just yet, because there are several things you need to know before deciding what your coin is really worth in today's market. We are going to look at its history, mintage, composition, condition, varieties, possible errors, and realistic market values, including what can make an ordinary bicentennial Eisenhower dollar become much more valuable. The first thing to understand is that the date on this coin is not simply 1976. The obverse displays the dual date, 1776 to 1976, because this special Eisenhower dollar was created to celebrate America's 200th anniversary. The D mint mark tells us that the coin was produced at the Denver Mint. The design features President Dwight D. Eisenhower on the front, while the reverse shows the Liberty Bell superimposed over the moon, with the Earth visible in the background. This special reverse was created specifically for the bicentennial issue and makes these dollars instantly recognizable to collectors. Now let's talk about the coin's composition, because this is one of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding the 1776 to 1976 Eisenhower dollar. A normal 177619760 business strike dollar is not a silver coin. The regular Denver issues were made from copper nickel-clad material, with copper-nickel outer layers bonded to a pure copper center. The standard coin weighs about 22.7 grams and measures roughly 38.5 millimeters across. The 177619760 issue was produced in two major varieties, known as Type 1 and Type 2. The Type 1 and Type 2 varieties are especially interesting because they can look almost identical to someone who is not familiar with Eisenhower dollars. The major difference is found on the reverse lettering. Type 1 has thicker lettering, while Type 2 has thinner lettering created with a modified reverse die. The difference can be seen particularly well in the words United States of America and $1. This variety distinction is important because collectors often organize their Eisenhower dollar collections by these different types. The Denver Mint produced 21,048,710 examples of the 177619760D Type 1 and 82,179,564 examples of the Type 2. That means the Type 2 variety was produced in a much larger quantity. Even though the mintage numbers are large, condition can still make a major difference. Large Eisenhower dollars were easily exposed to scratches, contact marks, and other damage because of their size and weight. Graysheet notes that copper nickel-clad business strikes in Ms. 65 or better become considerably scarcer, while Ms. 66 and Ms. 67 examples can be much more difficult to find. So, what is your 177619760 Eisenhower dollar worth if it is simply in good circulated condition? The answer may surprise you. If your coin has been circulated and shows normal wear, you should generally think in terms of around $200 to a small premium, rather than hundreds or thousands of dollars. NGC's July 2026 price information lists a circulated 177619760 Type 1 Eisenhower dollar around $1,500 to $1,900. That means an ordinary worn example is usually not a rare fortune. But now we get to the exciting part, because condition can completely change the story. A coin that looks almost brand new, with strong original luster and very few marks, can be worth significantly more than a circulated example. For the 177619760 Type 1, current market references show values rising from only a few dollars in lower mint state grades into much higher amounts in exceptional grades. AppMex currently lists approximately $6 for an uncirculated example, around $12 for Ms. 63, $22 for Ms. 64, $30 for Ms. 65, about $150 for Ms. 66, and a dramatically higher figure around $8,000 for Ms. 67. These are guide figures rather than guaranteed selling prices, and actual transactions can vary considerably. The Type 2 variety also has its own value range. Current collector price information lists ordinary lower mint state examples at only a few dollars, with values increasing as the grade becomes higher. One important point is that the Type 2 is generally more common in very high grades than the Type 1. PCGS explains that the Type 1 becomes much scarcer at Ms. 66 and above. which is one reason top-quality Type 1 examples can attract much stronger collector demand. Now let's talk about something that can make this coin truly exciting. There are rare wrong planchet errors connected to the 177619760 Eisenhower Dollar. PCGS records 177619760 silver-clad examples created as mint errors when the wrong planchet was used. Historical PCGS information reports only a very small number of these pieces, making them among the rarest Eisenhower Dollar errors. This is completely different from an ordinary copper-nickel-clad 177619760 dollar. If someone tells you that every 177619760 Eisenhower Dollar is silver, that is incorrect. But if a genuine Denver bicentennial dollar is discovered on an incorrect silver-clad planchet, that is a completely different and potentially extremely valuable situation. There is another reason you should inspect your coin carefully, and that is the Type 1 reverse. The Type 1 variety itself is not automatically worth thousands of dollars. Most examples are still affordable. However, high-grade examples can become scarce, and exceptional certified pieces have brought impressive prices. For example, PCGS records a 19760 Type 1 Ms. 66 Plus example that sold for $552 in a 2021 Stack's Bowers auction, while PCGS currently lists a guide value of $900 for that particular grade. These numbers show why condition and professional certification matter so much in the upper grades. If you have this coin at home, I want you to perform a simple inspection before you make any decision. First, look at the date and confirm that it reads 1776 to 1976. Next, find the small d mint mark below Eisenhower's portrait. Then turn the coin over and study the lettering around the Liberty Bell and Moon. Compare the thickness of the lettering to known Type 1 and Type 2 examples. After that, examine the fields of the coin for scratches, dents, stains, and contact marks. Pay special attention to the high points of Eisenhower's portrait because wear in those areas can quickly tell you whether the coin circulated. You should also look at the coin's overall luster. A circulated coin normally has lost some of its original shine and will show friction on the high points. An uncirculated coin can retain strong mint luster, although even an uncirculated Eisenhower dollar can have many bag marks from the way these large coins were handled and transported. This is why a coin can technically be uncirculated but still receive a lower mint state grade. The difference between Ms. 64, Ms. 65, Ms. 66, and higher grades can be extremely important for collectors, and please remember one very important rule: never clean your Eisenhower dollar. If the coin looks dirty, dark, dull, or discolored, do not polish it with a cloth, chemical, toothpaste, metal cleaner, or any other household product. Cleaning can leave permanent scratches and unnatural surfaces, and it can seriously reduce the coin's collector appeal. If you think you have a rare variety, high-grade coin, or possible silver planchet error, preserving the coin exactly as you found it is usually the safest approach. Let's put everything together. If your 177619760 Eisenhower dollar is a normal circulated copper-nickel-clad coin in good condition, a realistic expectation is around $1 to a small premium. If it is uncirculated, it can be worth several dollars or more depending on its grade and variety. A high-grade Type 1 can become much more valuable, especially when it reaches grades such as Ms. 66 or Ms. 67. And if you somehow have an authenticated wrong planchet silver-clad error, that is a completely different category of coin and could be worth a substantial amount to the right collector. The most important lesson is that the 177619760 Eisenhower dollar is not valuable simply because it is old or because it carries the bicentennial date. Millions were produced, and ordinary circulated examples are common. The real value comes from a combination of rarity, variety, condition, errors, and collector demand. This is why two coins with exactly the same date and mint mark can have completely different values. So before you spend that large 177619760 Eisenhower dollar, turn it over, inspect the reverse, check the lettering, examine the condition, and look for anything unusual. If the coin is worn and ordinary, it may only be worth a little more than $1. But if you find a beautiful high-grade example, an unusual variety, or evidence of a genuine mint error, you may have something that deserves a much closer look. Next up, the 1978D Eisenhower Dollar, one of the final regular issue Eisenhower dollars ever produced. If you have a 1978 Eisenhower dollar with a D mint mark, especially one in good condition, do not spend it before you know what you have. In this video, we are going to explore its history, mintage, condition, varieties, possible errors, and most importantly, what a 1978D Eisenhower dollar could realistically be worth in today's U.S. coin market. The 1978D Eisenhower dollar was struck at the Denver Mint, which is identified by the small d mint mark located below President Dwight D. Eisenhower's portrait. This coin belongs to the final year of the Eisenhower Dollar series. Eisenhower dollars were introduced in 1971 to honor President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and the series continued through 1978. After 1978, the large Eisenhower dollar was replaced by the much smaller Susan B. Anthony dollar. That makes 1978 especially interesting to collectors because it represents the final chapter of one of America's largest modern dollar coin series. The 1978D Eisenhower dollar is a copper nickel-clad coin. This is extremely important because many people assume that every large Eisenhower dollar is made of silver. That is not true. The regular 1978D business strike dollar was made from copper nickel-clad material with a copper core. The standard coin weighs approximately 22.68 grams and measures approximately 38.5 millimeters in diameter. Silver-clad Eisenhower dollars were produced for collectors in certain years, but the ordinary 1978D circulation issue is not a silver dollar. The Denver Mint produced 33,012,890 examples of the 1978D Eisenhower dollar. That is a substantial mintage, so the normal 1978D dollar is not considered a rare coin simply because of its date and mint mark. However, mintage is only one part of the value equation. A coin can have millions of examples originally produced and still become desirable in exceptional condition. This is especially true for large Eisenhower dollars because their size and weight made them prone to contact marks, scratches, and other surface problems during production, transportation, and storage. So, if your 1978D Eisenhower dollar is in good circulated condition, what should you expect it to be worth? The realistic answer is usually hundreds or thousands of dollars. An ordinary circulated 1978D Eisenhower dollar is generally worth around its $700 to a small premium, depending on its exact condition and the market. If your coin has visible wear, scratches, dull surfaces, or other signs of circulation, it is probably a common example. That does not make it worthless, because it is still a piece of American history, but it does mean you should keep your expectations realistic. Now, condition is where things become much more interesting. If you have a 1978D Eisenhower dollar that was never circulated and still has strong original mint luster, it can be worth more than a worn example. Collectors generally describe these coins using mint state grades, with higher numbers representing better preservation. And Ms. 60 coin is technically uncirculated, but it can have numerous marks. As you move toward Ms. 63, Ms. 64, Ms. 65, and higher, the coin generally needs better surfaces, stronger strike quality, and fewer distracting marks. The 1978D Eisenhower dollar is particularly interesting at the higher mint state grades. According to PCGS population and auction information, top-grade examples can be considerably more valuable than ordinary circulated coins. PCGS records a 1978D Eisenhower dollar graded Ms. 67 that sold for several $1,000s at auction. This does not mean your normal 1978D dollar is worth thousands. It means that exceptionally preserved coins at the very top of the grading scale can be dramatically different from the average example. This is one of the biggest lessons in coin collecting. You cannot determine the value of a coin only by looking at its date. Two 1978D Eisenhower dollars can look similar to a casual observer, but one could be worth around $1 while another could be worth hundreds or even thousands if it has exceptional grade quality or a major recognized error. That is why serious collectors examine every detail before deciding what a coin is worth. One of the first things you should inspect is President Eisenhower's portrait. Look closely at his cheek, jaw, hair, and the surrounding fields. On a circulated coin, the highest points of the design will show wear. On a better mint state example, you should see strong detail and original luster. However, be careful because bag marks are common on Eisenhower dollars. These coins were large and heavy, and they often came into contact with other coins during storage and transportation. A coin can be technically uncirculated while still having several noticeable contact marks. Next, turn the coin over and inspect the reverse. The reverse features an eagle landing on the moon with the Earth in the background. Look closely at the eagle, the moon, the lettering, and the open fields. Strong detail and attractive original surfaces can make an uncirculated coin more appealing to collectors. Also check the edge for unusual discoloration or anything that looks different from a normal copper-nickel-clad coin. Another important point is that you should never clean your 1978D Eisenhower dollar. If you find an old coin covered in dirt or dark discoloration, your first instinct might be to polish it. Do not do that. Household cleaners, metal polish, toothpaste, abrasive materials, and even aggressive rubbing can leave scratches or damage the original surface. A cleaned coin can lose substantial collector appeal. If you think you have a valuable coin, preserving the original surface is much safer than trying to make it look shiny. Now let's talk about possible errors. Error coins are mistakes that occurred during the minting process, and genuine major errors can be highly collectible. On a 1978D Eisenhower dollar, collectors may look for unusual strikes, planchet problems, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, doubled features, or other mint-made abnormalities. But this is where you need to be very careful. Not every strange-looking coin is a valuable error. Damage that happens after the coin leaves the mint can create shapes and marks that look unusual but have little or no premium value. For that reason, if you believe your 1978D Eisenhower dollar has a major mint error, do not clean it, scratch it, bend it, or attempt to repair it. Take clear photographs and compare the coin with reliable references. For a potentially major error, professional authentication can be worthwhile. Certification from a respected grading service can provide confidence to buyers and collectors and can help establish the coin's grade and attribution. Another common question is whether the 1978D Eisenhower dollar can contain silver. The normal answer is no. The regular 1978D business strike is copper-nickel clad. If you have a coin that appears silver-colored, that does not automatically mean it is a silver Eisenhower dollar. Surface appearance alone cannot prove composition. Silver-clad Eisenhower dollars were made as special collector issues, and their mint marks and packaging are different from the regular Denver circulation coins. Always identify the exact issue before assuming that a coin is made of silver. Let's talk about the value range one more time so you know what to expect. A worn, circulated 1978D Eisenhower dollar in ordinary good condition is generally around face value or only a small premium. A nicer circulated example with attractive surfaces may bring somewhat more to the right collector. Uncirculated examples can move into several dollar territory and higher depending on grade. High-grade certified examples can reach substantially higher values, and exceptional top-grade pieces have sold for impressive amounts. Major authenticated errors can be worth far more than normal examples, but remember, a price guide is not the same thing as a guaranteed selling price. Coin values change based on collector demand, auction results, dealer inventories, certification, grade, eye appeal, and the specific marketplace. A coin listed for a certain amount does not necessarily mean someone will actually pay that amount. The best way to understand the current market is to look at recent sales of coins with the same date, mint mark, variety, and grade.so. Should you keep a 1978D Eisenhower dollar? If it is in good circulated condition, it may not make you rich, but it is absolutely worth keeping if you enjoy American coins or collecting Eisenhower dollars. If you find one that is unusually clean, bright, sharply struck, and almost free of contact marks, that is when you should pay closer attention. A high-quality example from the final year of the series can be much more interesting to collectors than an ordinary worn coin, and here is the biggest takeaway from today's video. The 1978D Eisenhower dollar is common in ordinary circulated grades, so don't believe every claim online that says a normal 1978D dollar is automatically worth thousands. The extraordinary values belong to exceptional coins, such as extremely high-grade certified examples or genuine major mint errors. Your job as a collector is to separate the ordinary coins from the truly unusual ones before you spend your 1978D Eisenhower dollar. Check the date, confirm the D mint mark, inspect the condition, look for original luster, examine the surfaces, and carefully check for genuine mint errors. If it is worn and ordinary, you can realistically expect only a small premium over its $1 face value. But if the coin is in exceptional condition or has a verified minting error, the story can be very different. Next up, the 197D Eisenhower Dollar, a large and historic American dollar that can be much more interesting than it first appears. If you have a 1972 Eisenhower dollar with a D mint mark, don't spend it or sell it until you've checked a few important details. In this video, we're going to examine the history of the 197D Eisenhower dollar, its mintage, condition, varieties, possible errors, and most importantly, what this coin can realistically be worth in today's U.S. coin market. The 197D Eisenhower dollar was struck at the Denver Mint and can be identified by the small d mint mark below. President Dwight D. Eisenhower's portrait. Eisenhower dollars were first introduced in 1971, making the 197D issue one of the early coins in the series. These enormous dollar coins were created to honor President Eisenhower, and the reverse features an eagle landing on the moon with Earth in the background. The design was created by chief engraver Frank Gasparo and was inspired by the Apollo 11 mission, because of their large size and connection to both Eisenhower and the space program. These coins remain popular with collectors today. Before we talk about value, there is one very important thing you need to know about the 1972 Eisenhower dollar. There are three major reverse varieties for the 1972 Philadelphia issue, commonly known as Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3. These varieties are famous among Eisenhower dollar collectors because the image of Earth on the reverse was modified during the year. However, the 197D Eisenhower dollar is not the same variety situation as the 1972 Philadelphia issue. The famous Type 2 1972 variety that collectors search for is specifically associated with the Philadelphia Mint issue without a mint mark. So if your coin has a D mint mark, don't assume it is the rare 1972 Type 2 simply because it says 1972. The Denver Mint produced 92,529,650 examples of the 197D Eisenhower dollar. That's a large mintage, which means the ordinary circulated 197D is not considered rare just because of its date. However, large mintage numbers don't tell the entire story. Condition can have a major effect on value, especially for Eisenhower dollars. These coins are large, heavy, and prone to bag marks and contact marks. Finding one with exceptionally clean surfaces, strong luster, and a high professional grade can be much more difficult than finding a worn example. So let's get to the question you're probably asking. What is a 197D Eisenhower dollar worth if your coin is in good circulated condition? The realistic answer is usually around its $600 to a small premium. A worn 197D Eisenhower dollar is generally common and does automatically carry a huge value. If your coin has obvious circulation wear, scratches, dull surfaces, or contact marks, it is probably an ordinary example. You should expect hundreds or thousands of dollars simply because the coin is from 1972, but now let's imagine you find one that looks completely different from the typical circulated coin. Suppose the coin has never been used in circulation, still has strong original mint luster, and has very few marks. That's when the value conversation becomes much more interesting. Uncirculated Eisenhower dollars are graded using the mint state scale, generally from Ms. 60 upward. As the grade increases, the coin becomes more difficult to find and can become more valuable. High-grade 197D Eisenhower dollars are especially interesting because many examples were heavily marked during production and storage. When you're inspecting your coin, start with President Eisenhower's portrait. Look at the cheek, jaw, hair, and the open areas around his head. These are excellent places to see signs of circulation and contact marks. A circulated coin will usually show friction and loss of original luster. An uncirculated coin should retain its original mint appearance, although it can still have contact marks. Remember that a coin doesn't have to look perfect to be uncirculated, but the number and severity of marks can have a major effect on the final grade. Next, turn the coin over and examine the reverse. The eagle, moon, earth, and lettering should all be inspected carefully. Look for strong details and original surfaces. Also examine the open fields because scratches and marks can be very distracting to collectors. If you find a coin with excellent surfaces and very strong luster, it may be worth setting aside for further research rather than spending it. Another important issue with Eisenhower dollars is composition. Many people believe every Eisenhower dollar is silver, but that's not correct. The regular 197D Eisenhower dollar was struck in copper nickel clad, not silver. The coin has a copper core surrounded by copper-nickel outer layers. The standard-clad Eisenhower dollar weighs approximately 20 to 0.68 grams. Silver-clad Eisenhower dollars were made as special collector issues. But you should never assume that a D-mint coin from 1972 is silver simply because it has a silver-colored appearance, if you have a 197D dollar that appears unusually different. Composition should be investigated carefully. However, don't scratch the coin or use destructive tests. If you think you may have a wrong planchet error or another significant mint error, professional examination is the safest approach. A genuine mint error can be dramatically more valuable than a normal example. But authentication is extremely important because many unusual-looking coins are actually damaged after leaving the mint. Now let's talk about errors, because this is where collectors can sometimes find the biggest surprises. A genuine mint error occurs during the manufacturing process. Eisenhower dollars can be found with different types of errors, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, striking problems, and other unusual mint-made characteristics. But you need to understand that not every scratch, dent, discoloration, or missing detail is an error. Post-mint damage is extremely common, especially on large coins like Eisenhower dollars. One of the biggest mistakes new collectors make is believing that a damaged coin is automatically an error. For example, if the edge looks flattened or the design appears distorted in one area, it might be damage from a machine or another coin rather than something that happened at the mint. Before assigning a major value to an unusual 197D Eisenhower dollar, compare it with reliable references and, for significant possibilities, consider professional authentication. Let's talk about market value again. If your 197D Eisenhower dollar is a normal circulated coin in good condition, the realistic value is generally around $1 to a small premium. If it's in better circulated condition, it may bring somewhat more depending on demand. Uncirculated examples can move into several dollar territory and higher depending on their grade. High-grade certified examples can command significantly more, particularly when they reach the upper mint state grades. But remember that an exceptional auction record for a top-grade coin does not mean every 197D dollar is worth the same amount. This distinction is extremely important for YouTube coin videos because you may see headlines claiming that a 1972 Eisenhower dollar is worth thousands of dollars. Sometimes those headlines are based on a very specific high-grade coin, an extremely rare error, or a particular variety. They should never be interpreted as the value of every coin with that date. Your individual coin's value depends on its exact condition, variety, authentication, and market demand. There is also an important difference between a 197D and a 1972 Philadelphia Eisenhower dollar. If you're searching for the famous 1972 Type 2 reverse, you need to understand that the well-known 1972 Type 2 variety is associated with the Philadelphia issue. A D mint mark means your coin came from Denver, so don't confuse the two. This simple detail can prevent you from mistakenly believing that an ordinary 197D is the famous rare Type 2. Now, if you find a 197D Eisenhower dollar in good condition, should you keep it? Absolutely, especially if you're building a complete Eisenhower dollar collection. Even common coins can be valuable historically and can become more interesting when they are part of a complete date and mint mark set. The 197D is an important early issue in the series and is a great coin for anyone interested in modern US dollars. And please remember, never clean your Eisenhower dollar. Do not use silver polish, metal cleaner, toothpaste, baking soda, rough cloths, or abrasive materials. Cleaning can create permanent hairlines and damage the original surface. A naturally aged coin can be much more desirable to collectors than a cleaned coin that has been made artificially shiny. So let's summarize everything. A normal 197D Eisenhower dollar in good circulated condition is generally worth around its $600 or a small premium. A nicer uncirculated coin can be worth more, and high-grade certified examples can become considerably more valuable. Genuine mint errors can also command strong premiums. But the famous 1972 Type 2 reverse variety should not be confused with the D mint issue because the well-known 1972 Type 2 variety is associated with the Philadelphia coin. Before you spend your 197D Eisenhower dollar, check the date, look for the D mint mark, examine the condition, inspect the surfaces, and make sure you understand exactly which coin you have. If it is worn and ordinary, don't expect a fortune. But if it has exceptional preservation, an unusual mint-made feature, or another collectible characteristic, then it deserves a much closer look. The most important lesson is simple: don't judge an Eisenhower dollar by its date alone. Look at the mint mark, condition, variety, composition, and possible errors. The difference between an ordinary coin and a truly collectible example can be enormous, and that's exactly why checking your old coins is so much fun. Next up, the 1971 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark. If you have one of these large American dollar coins, don't spend it before checking it carefully, because the 1971 Eisenhower dollar was the very first year of the Eisenhower dollar series, and there are some important details that can make a major difference in value. In this video, we're going to look at its history, mintage, composition, condition, varieties, possible errors, and realistic market values in today's U.S. coin market. The 1971 Eisenhower dollar was introduced to honor President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and it was the first large-size U.S. dollar coin produced for general circulation since the peace dollar ended in 1935. The coin features Eisenhower's portrait on the obverse, while the reverse shows an eagle landing on the moon with Earth visible in the background. The design was created by Frank Gasparro and is closely connected to America's space program and the Apollo 11 moon landing. Because of this historical connection, Eisenhower dollars remain one of the most recognizable modern American dollar coins. Now, when you say you have a 1971 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark, that tells us something important. A 1971 Eisenhower dollar without a mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia traditionally did not place a mint mark on its coins, so don't assume that the missing mint mark means something is wrong with your coin. In this case, no mint mark is exactly what you should expect on the regular 1971 Philadelphia issue. The 1971 Philadelphia Eisenhower dollar had a mintage of 47,799,000 coins. That sounds like an enormous number, and it means the ordinary 1971 Philadelphia dollar is not automatically rare. However, the 1971 issue is still important because it was the first year of the series. More importantly, collectors have identified different reverse varieties and other characteristics that can make certain examples more desirable. Before we talk about price, let's discuss one of the most important questions: is your 1971 Eisenhower dollar silver? This is where many people get confused. The standard 1971 Philadelphia circulation Eisenhower dollar was made from copper nickel-clad material, not silver. However, 1971's Eisenhower dollars were also produced in a 40% silver composition for collectors. The S mint mark indicates San Francisco. Therefore, a 1971 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark is normally the Philadelphia copper nickel-clad issue, not the 40% silver collector version. The regular 1971 Philadelphia Eisenhower dollar weighs approximately 22.68 grams and measures about 38.5 millimeters in diameter. It is a large coin compared with modern US dollars, which is one reason collectors enjoy owning Eisenhower dollars. When you hold one in your hand, it feels much larger and heavier than today's smaller dollar coins. So what is a 1971 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark worth today if it is in good circulated condition? The realistic answer may surprise you. A normal circulated example is generally worth around its $700 to a small premium, depending on condition and the current market. If your coin has heavy wear, scratches, discoloration, or other signs of circulation, you should not expect hundreds or thousands of dollars simply because it is from 1971, but this is where the condition of your coin becomes extremely important. If you have a 1971 Philadelphia Eisenhower dollar that has never circulated and still has strong original mint luster, its value can be considerably higher. Professional coin graders use the mint state scale to describe the condition of uncirculated coins. Grades such as Ms. 60, Ms. 63, Ms. 64, Ms. 65, and higher represent increasingly well-preserved coins. The higher the grade, the more difficult the coin can be to find, especially with attractive surfaces and strong eye appeal. One of the biggest challenges with Eisenhower dollars is contact marks. These coins were large and heavy, and many were transported and stored in ways that caused them to hit against other coins. As a result, even coins that never circulated can have numerous marks. A coin that looks brand new to your eyes may still receive a relatively modest mint state grade because of scratches or contact marks. When examining your 1971 Eisenhower dollar, Start with the portrait of President Eisenhower. Look carefully at his cheek, jaw, hair, and the open fields around the portrait. On a circulated coin, the highest points will show wear. On a true uncirculated coin, the details should remain sharp and the coin should retain some original mint luster. Then turn the coin over and inspect the eagle, moon, earth, and lettering. Look for scratches, marks, weak details, and anything that appears unusual. Now let's talk about varieties. Because the reverse design of the 1971 Eisenhower dollar is one of the areas collectors pay close attention to, the reverse was created using different dies, and collectors have identified differences in the details of the design. These varieties are more specialized than simply checking the date and mint mark. So if you believe your coin has an unusual reverse, compare it with reliable Eisenhower dollar references before assuming it is rare. Another thing you should check is the edge. A normal copper nickel-clad Eisenhower dollar has a distinctive edge showing the copper core between the outer clad layers. The edge can provide useful information about the coin's composition. However, do not damage the coin trying to perform tests yourself. If you believe the coin could have an unusual planchet or composition error, professional examination is much safer, and this brings us to mint errors. Genuine mint errors can sometimes be worth much more than normal examples. Eisenhower dollars can be found with errors such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, striking abnormalities, wrong planchet errors, and other unusual mint-made characteristics. But be careful, because damage after the coin left the mint is extremely common. A scratch, dent, flattened edge, or strange mark does not automatically mean you have a valuable error. If you believe your 1971 Eisenhower dollar has a major error, don't clean it, don't scratch it, and don't try to repair it. Keep the coin exactly as you found it and have it examined by a reputable coin dealer, numismatist, or professional grading service if the evidence appears convincing. Proper authentication can make a huge difference when dealing with potentially valuable errors. Now let's talk about the value difference between an ordinary circulated coin and a high-grade example. A worn 1971 Philadelphia Eisenhower dollar may be worth around $1 or a small premium. A nice uncirculated example can be worth several dollars or more depending on grade. As the coin moves into higher mint state grades, prices can rise substantially. Exceptionally high-grade certified examples can command much stronger prices because very few coins survive with the combination of excellent surfaces, strong strike, and attractive eye appeal required for those grades. This is why you should never believe a simple statement like 1971 Eisenhower dollar equals thousands of dollars. That is not how the coin market works. The date alone does not make every $1,971 rare. High prices usually apply to a specific grade, variety, error, or exceptionally preserved example. Your individual coin has to be evaluated on its own characteristics. Another common mistake is assuming that every old Eisenhower dollar is silver. Remember, the 1971 Philadelphia no mint mark coin is normally copper nickel clad. The silver collector versions from 1971 were struck at San Francisco and carry an S mint mark. If someone tells you that your no mint mark 1971 Eisenhower dollar is automatically a silver coin, be very cautious. Also, please do not clean your coin. This is one of the most important rules for anyone collecting American coins. Do not use silver polish, toothpaste, baking soda, metal cleaner, abrasive cloths, or chemicals. Even if your coin looks dirty or dark, cleaning can leave permanent scratches and damage the original surface. Collectors generally prefer coins with original surfaces, and a cleaned coin can be worth less than an untouched example. So, let's summarize the 1971 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark. It was produced at the Philadelphia Mint and is normally a copper nickel-clad coin. An ordinary circulated example is generally worth around face value to a small premium. A better preserved uncirculated example can be worth more, and high-grade certified pieces can become significantly more valuable. Genuine errors and unusual varieties can also carry substantial premiums. But don't confuse the normal Philadelphia issue with the 1971S silver collector coins. If you have one of these coins at home, take a close look before you spend it. Check the date, confirm that there is no mint mark, examine the condition, inspect the portrait and reverse, look at the edge, and watch for anything unusual. If your coin is heavily worn, it may not be worth much more than $1. But if it is unusually well preserved or has a genuine mint-made error, It could deserve much closer attention. The 1971 Eisenhower dollar is historically important because it started an entirely new chapter in American coinage. It honors one of America's most famous presidents, celebrates the nation's connection to space exploration, and represents the return of the large dollar coin to American commerce. Even a common example can be a fascinating piece of history, while an exceptional example can be an important collectible. Thank you for watching Coin Reveal USA. If you enjoy discovering the real value of American coins, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because we are constantly searching for rare varieties, valuable errors, high-grade coins, and hidden treasures that collectors should never overlook. And remember, before you spend an old American dollar, always check the date, mint mark, condition, composition, and possible errors. Your next valuable discovery could be hiding in plain sight. This is Coin Reveal USA, and I'll see you in the next coin hunt.